in this video, I'll talk about weak complicial sets. So the strict complicial sets were the nerves of strict omega categories. And these weak complicial sets are, well, meant to be the nerves of weak omega categories. So the kind of omega categories where things like the unit law and the associative law only hold up to equivalence higher cells. Well, except that instead of making precise what these weak omega categories are, and then characterizing their nerves, we directly define these weak complicial sets and think of these things as a kind of weak omega categories. Anyway, so this is the definition, and there are three differences between this definition and that of strict complicial sets. The first is, well, for strict complicial sets, we ask that only degenerate one simplices be marked. Well, because in the strict case, we were thinking of the marked simplices as the identities, and so, well, only degenerate one simplices are the identities in that context. But in this weak setting, we want to think of the marked simplices in this marked simplicial set as equivalences of some sort. And so we just drop that condition because, well, there can be, well, equivalences that are not the identities. And the second difference is that we no longer ask for a unique existence. Well, because, for example, if you think about the composition of a pair of one cells encoded as this lifting property against the two-dimensional Horn inclusion, well, the inclusion of the Horn into the two-simplex. Well, in the strict case, what that is encoding is, well, given a pair of one cells F and G, there is a unique two-simplex of the form F, G, something, and identity in the middle. And of course, that unique two-simplex is the identity on this composite GF. Well, but in this weak setting, now a map out of this complicial simplex into, well, the complicial two-simplex into X is to be thought of as, well, a one cell, and another one cell, and just an equivalence two cell in the middle. And there can be, well, even if you fix the two factors, there can be many such two simplices, so we don't ask for unique existence, we only ask for the existence. For this one, it doesn't actually matter because this map here is an epi, so if the lift exists, it's automatically unique. Anyway, so that was the second difference between the weak and strict complicial sets. And the last one is these non-strict inequalities. So for the strict complicial sets, we were asking for these lifts only strictly between 0 and n. So these are the inner horns. But for weak complicial sets, we also ask for these outer things to have lifts. So if you compare just the definitions of strict and weak complicial sets, it's, well, not clear that strict complicial sets are weak complicial sets, but this is true. I'll give a reference in the description. But anyway, so why do we want these outer horns? Well, so I said in this weak setting, we think of the marked simplices as equivalences of some sort. But, I mean, just our thinking that way doesn't, doesn't automatically justify that thinking. So somehow we want to make sure that these marked simplices behave like some kind of equivalences. And these outer things encode that bit of the definition. So here is a non-example of a weak complicial set. So take a category C and take X to be the nerve of this category C. And we mark all simplices, well, all positive dimensional simplices. Then, well, if we think about this kind of lifting problem, well, because everything in X is marked, the marking on this side doesn't matter. So now this lifting problem is equivalent to the usual Complicial lifting problem without the marking, where X is just a nerve and this is the usual Horn inclusion. And so this inclusion does have, this kind of problem always has a lift, well, a unique lift for k strictly between 0 and n. So, so in this range, we can't see the fact that not all marked things are equivalences. I mean, we marked all the simplices, including, the one simplices corresponding to the morphisms in this category C, which are not isomorphisms. So somehow we are doing something that we are not meant to do, but in this range we can't see that problem. So the outer horns encode this implication that marked simplices are invertible up to marked simplices. So here's an example. So this is what the zeroth Complicial 2 simplex looks like. Well, I didn't give the formal definition, but it's the same kind of definition. So here, a non-degenerate simplex is marked if and only if its image contains both 0 and 1, 0 and its neighbors. In other words, anything that is not contained in the 0th face or the first face is marked. And the horn has the marking induced from this. So if we now consider this kind of lifting problem, what does it encode? Well, so if you have a marked one simplex in X, then you can construct a map out of this horn into X, where this one simplex is marked, and this is sent to the marked one simplex in X that you chose, and we map this one simplex to the degenerate one in X. Then, well, that's a perfectly valid map from this horn into X. So if X is a weak complicial set, we should be able to extend that to this simplex. But then this map will encode some one simplex basically going in the opposite direction to the original thing, because this is the degenerate one simplex. And this marked 2 simplex we want to think of as an equivalence. So this is somehow witnessing the fact that the marked one simplex that we chose has a retraction up to marked 2 simplex. And of course, if you now think about the other case, the second horn inclusion, then you can see that any marked one simplex in X in particular would have a section up to marked 2 simplex. So in that sense, these marked simplices are, at least marked 1 simplices are invertible up to marked 2 simplices. And if you think about the horn inclusions in higher dimensions, you can see that marked simplices in general are, at least in some kind of simplically encodable way, invertible up to marked simplices. So this implication holds in any weak complicial set, but the converse may not hold. Well, because I mean that is not part of the definition, but if the converse does hold in a suitable sense, well, basically, well, in this sectional instructional sense, but well, I'm not going to give the actual definition here, but if the converse holds, then the weak complicial set is also said to be saturated. Right, I think that's it for this video.